Hi, everybody. It's Mike Yao with Savage Kingdom's role playing game and Fire in the Head Productions. Today's video is about Savage Kingdoms and also about Red Sun RPG. So, as you might know from past videos, I'm currently working on a new tabletop role playing game called Red Sun that takes place in the same setting as Savage Kingdoms. It's just 2,500 to 3,000 years prior. I haven't quite decided exactly. I'll probably leave it kind of ambiguous, actually. And it fits in with the current lore of Savage Kingdoms about 90%. The other 10% I'm having to tweak a little bit. But that's fine. I actually like my historians and lore masters in the setting to never be exactly precise. I think it's much more mysterious and much more interesting if there's some conflict and non-assurance. So this video is about which one of those to publish in the year 2024, being the next year of the dragon, by the way, which is why I really want to get a new gaming product out next year to kind of showcase at DragonCon and some other places that I kind of frequent and run games and have some at least very minor notoriety. And so, for better or worse. So yeah, I want to let you guys. I want you guys to comment down below which one. So before you do comment or consider which one to vote for, so to speak, here's a couple of things to consider, right? And things that I'm considering at the very least about which one to publish. So I'll start with Savage Kingdoms, my already published game. It's been around since 2014. This will be the 10th anniversary coming up next year, and that's why I was thinking about a next edition. And I'm not trying to call it 4th edition because there's a really bad connotation with that. I know it's Dungeons and Dragons, with Dungeons and Dragons and not Savage Kingdom specifically, but sort of in tabletop role playing in general. A lot of people did not like 4E D&D. I was one of them, even though I did give it the old college try several times. I like to try things several times before I really can decide something is not for me. Just life experience, I suppose. So I don't want to associate Savage Kingdoms with that. So I would be calling it the 10th anniversary edition, which I think is kind of cool. I don't want to attach a number to it this time. Second edition I called Reforged, which I kind of like. I like kind of adding names to it, but now I've already kind of done that, and I can't really come up with another cool name, right? So it would probably be the 10th anniversary edition. Yeah. I like that better before I just said it again, and now I'm like, I don't like it as much. But anyway, that's what it is for now. That's the working title. Right. So the reason I would publish that is, like I just said, because it's the 10th anniversary. I feel like maybe there's an opportunity. But it's only been at this moment of this recording, 9 years, going on 9.5 years, and it's already been 3 editions. So basically 1 edition every 3 years. Could be a bit much even for an independent game. I know I've spoken about this before, about how smaller games do need to continue, like you do need to come up with a new edition with your core, and I'm speaking like your core rulebook, right? Which is the normal format for games. Dungeons and Dragons has the Player's Handbook, DM's Guide, Monster Manual kind of format that started all, but honestly, very few games follow that, and I like to have my core rulebook, meaning that you can run the whole game out of this one book as your main rule system. Character creation, some monsters, it's got all your basic stuff in the one book, and then you publish supplements after that if the game is doing reasonably well, or if you just feel like it or whatever. And that might include, with the Savage Kingdoms model, it would be the Savage East, which expanded into the eastern part of the world, added some more talents and weaknesses and spells and creatures and monsters, stuff like that. So that's what I'm talking about as far as a new edition of Savage Kingdoms. So the pros of that is that I already have the marketing material mostly done. Like the logo has been designed, that I've been happy with it. Just designed by Mike Maurer many years ago. I still like that logo. It's known sort of by like 12 people. No, maybe a couple hundred people. Which is the whole point for logos, right? It's a symbology that they brand, they emblazon into the human mind and memory. And other marketing materials are kind of there. I would obviously do some more stuff, blah blah blah. But the main thing is I do have some updated rules, right? So why just randomly published a new edition if it's not really a new edition, right? So I have some upgrades to the rules, which I think are actually great improvements. I think there's been a couple people that are, I don't know if they're quite as impressed with some of the stuff I post, but that's fine. Opinions are, I want different opinions because that's the whole point of this video. I want to get some opinions from people about maybe, some advice about what to do next. In the end, I'll make my own decision, but I do like to work as a kind of advisement. I like to just when I'm doing theater, directing theater, I do the same thing. I like to collaborate and get different opinions because people come up with things you never thought of, for better or worse, often better, and you can just decide from that and just be the delegator, right? Same with game design, at least the way I approach it. So, but I think in my head, and I think some other people kind of agree that the upgrades I've come up with that I've kind of shared in the insider like Facebook groups and stuff like that have been very positive. It gets rid of some of the past problems in third edition D&D when you're the author of it and you run it so many times and you play sets it, you start learning the little things that you could have probably caught or mostly at the time I thought was fine. And then now as I've grown 2 or 3 years older, suddenly maybe I don't like that design choice as much, or it didn't work out as much as I thought. Or a design choice I was going to make and I didn't, I now see that I probably should have, and I can add that in fourth edition. So my point is that a new edition would be as the point I would assume by most game designers would be an upgrade, an improvement. Um, Maybe some things wouldn't be, but the goal is to improve. The goal is never to, oh, that's good, let's make it terrible. Obviously, right? So it would be to upgrade and make some improvements. And like I said, I've come up with I think some really good stuff that sleekify, such a word, makes the rule system a little more elegant. Character creation, though very robust, and a lot of people kind of most people like that robustness. I detected, and several people agree that, perhaps more than several, that it could be tightened a little bit more and less. So I came up with a way to make that easier. The system is every bit as robust as it was, but it's easier. Mathematically, you don't have to flip through the book a million times as before. Though some people don't mind that. I personally like a little bit of a crunchy game. I'm not like super nerdy crunch where the game gets slowed to a halt because all these millions of numbers and things you have to look up. I find that tedious. I'm much more of a storyteller based RPG player. I like things to be pretty fast, but at the same time, fast running, fast moving, like not a lot of stopping to look up rules and breaking momentum and breaking character and stuff like that. However, I think fastness in a game system could be done with still a decent amount of crunch and robustness. So that's kind of what I'm going for. And I think SK3 already really pretty much had 90% of that. Again, I'm pretty happy. If I don't do a new edition of SK, I'll be completely happy. I think third edition is awesome for the most part, if I might say. So, but yeah, I do definitely have seen some things that I could correct. And it's been fun actually doing that and go, I mean, that's how I approach it. I usually write down design goals or at least have them in my head. And then as I go through the list, I'm like, okay, how can I tackle this problem? And then it's fun to kind of tweak and type and create and edit and omit and go back to the drawing board or not. And it's kind of fun. It's almost like a challenge. It's like, okay, this was the problem. How can I simplify it or make it more elegant or more enjoyable / fun for everybody? And if you can get all of those into one, then you've made a good design choice. So I'm pretty happy with some of the early design choices that I am making for a new edition of SK if it were to happen. And if it doesn't happen in 2014, maybe it happens in 2016. Who knows? So that's the debate for today. So let me know. All right. So the other candidate is Red Sun, right? As far as publishing next year and the year of the dragon, by the way, the year I was born. So that's another reason I feel like I just need to put out a book next year. I don't know why. Plus, it's fun. Kickstarting and like mailing stuff out, it can get a little tedious and a little annoying at times, but overall it's actually pretty exciting and pretty fun. All right, so Red Sun would be the other candidate, or at least the top two candidates. So pros and cons of that. So I'll start with the pros. So pros of Red Sun is that it's new, it's brand new. It's a D8 die pool system instead of the D20 exploding D20 system of SK. As much as I love that, honestly am more of a single die person because again I like the game to flow. I don't like gimmicks that much. However, I think I'm pretty happy with this D8 pool system. It's not that gimmicky. There's a couple little gimmicky things we do with it, but I think it's kind of fun. I don't know. And the good news is it's very easy math. So I kind of challenged myself to like, let's do a system where you don't actually have to add a bunch of numbers up, add modifiers up. In fact, you don't add any. The only time you even add the dice together is for initiative, and I might even come up with a different system of how to do that. But otherwise, you're rolling multiple dice and you're looking for as many of the target number that you can get. Pretty simple and not particularly innovative. I know some other systems in the past have done that. I think with D6s. This might be the only D8 system that I've seen. I'm sure somebody's dabbled with one or somebody's, but maybe it's just never been published or whatever. So yeah, so I'm kind of happy with the game mechanic system. The genre is sword and sorcery, even more so than Savage Kingdoms. I know I used to market Savage Kingdoms as sword and sorcery. It's become kind of became its own thing over time. I now call it more of a Dark Ages fantasy. Because when people say medieval fantasy, they generally mean medieval, Middle Ages, to possibly up to Renaissance. Um, and then sword and sorcery typically is in an antiquated era, like ancient age, right? Age of antiquity, classical age, Bronze Age. Um, so Savage Kingdoms fits actually right in between those two. That age that I prefer, that's often ignored, the Dark Ages, as we call them in the real world. We now have found out that it wasn't as dark as people thought. I mean, it was dark, but there was stuff was happening, right? People were still inventing stuff, blah blah blah. But Savage Kingdoms, or actually, that Savage Kingdoms, Red Sun takes place in a more classical sword and sorcery within Age of Antiquity. Precisely, it's the 3,000 years before the current SK era, 2,500 to 3,000 years before the current. So it's the same setting, the same world. That's why it's called Red Sun. It has a red giant. Sun, so it's a dying sun, but it's a big sun, and it has two moons, just like Savage Kingdoms. Again, it's the same planet, if you want to use that phrase. I try to refrain from all the hard science because I think that demystifies a medieval fantasy setting with a lot of mysticism and magic. But if you want to look at it scientifically, two moons, two orbiting satellites, and it has a red sun. If there are other planets in the system, nobody knows. That might be some of the stars that people see in the sky. Probably are, actually. But anyway, so, and its vibe is more heavy metal magazine meets Conan the Barbarian meets Fire and Ice, that cool Frank Frazetta animated film. Frank Frazetta's art himself, really. All of that, the Beastmaster. So all of that kind of sword and sorcery from Howard, but also kind of like a nice layer of like the 80s and 70s when it got really kind of, I don't know, in some ways a little cheesy, but very vivid, right? It kind of started popping out in many people's imagination as these films, not all of them that great, honestly, were coming out, and were able to kind of bring to life a lot of these old sorcery stories that go back to the 30s with Robert E. Howard and Wagner and even some other people in that era, or even before, Michael Moorcock, etc. So that would be the vibe of Red Sun and the Savage Kingdom. So again, what are the cons of Red Sun? So the cons are it's a brand new game, but I actually think that's more of a pro. Um, I personally think it's probably going to be easier to market Red Sun. I think Savage Kingdoms has the thing of like, oh, cool, it's another edition of that, but there's not really a whole lot of people that play it. The drawback is that, oh god, it's another edition of that same game, even though it'll be enough different, but people don't like to bother to read the book and actually see the differences, I guess. But so as a knee-jerk reaction, I can see that happening. Red Sun being fresher and new, even though it is attached to the SK setting, it's totally different game mechanic. Some of the races and cultures are similar, or it's an earlier version of some of those, and some don't even exist yet in SK, and they do in Red Sun, or they don't by the time the Red Sun era comes around. So what I'm saying is it's the same setting, but there's enough differences to be interesting and to warrant a totally different game system. Not the least of which is an entirely different game mechanic, dice mechanic. So yeah, my I wouldn't say limited, moderate experience. I used to work in graphic design and even for an advertising company, so I have like some experience in marketing. Not to mention marketing this stuff. Um, would be probably the Lean Red Sun as far as like creator marketing goes. Something new might cause a little more excitement. Um, but yeah, but then emotionally, I'm really attached to SK. I think I've said this in a couple of previous videos. As the author of that setting's been around for a while. Not only just like the Savage Kingdoms game mechanic version of that setting, which I just kind of call the known world, um, or I would call it Astagonia or Dragon Sea, which is the main sea. Different names, nothing really official. That setting goes way back, actually, for 35 years old, I think. Wow. And so I know that world in my head. Like I can visualize every landscape, every kingdom, every NPC. Well, most every NPC. Anything gazetteer like or lore like in the setting, I pretty much will know. Or I'm comfortable in just coming off the top of my head because I know what it probably should be had I had thought about it before, if that makes any sense. So my point is, I'm so comfortable with that setting in Savage Kingdoms that it's almost lazy design during the fourth edition. I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. Like it's like kind of an easy handoff to go up a yard into the end zone instead of a 7 yard drive or something. Um, but so in other words, not lazy necessarily. There's a lot of work involved to get to the 1 yard, but it's just the 1 yard and not the 7 yards. If that makes any sense. Whereas Red Sun will require a little bit more work because I'll need to come up with a new logo and marketing stuff and like that. But it's very exciting, and the fact that it's new maybe will bring more interest in the game, and then in return, maybe people will look and go, "Hey, there's like another version of this game, like 3,000 years in the future, at least in regards to the setting, called Savage Kingdoms, and it uses a D20 instead of D8. It's cool. Maybe we'll try it out." So maybe the two will feed off of each other. That's not honestly my intent, but marketing wise, if that happens, that would be cool. So anyway, let me know in the comments down below whether you think I should do Red Sun next or Savage Kingdoms. And when I say do, I mean like the core rule books. Speaking of which, really quick, if I do Savage Kingdoms 5th edition, I'm going to go with or next edition, I'm going to go with the 2nd edition, the Reforged module. I'm going to have the core rulebook have the East and the West. So I'm going to try to streamline it. I've already got some editing going on. I've already got some good ideas, I think. And I'm aiming for like 350 to 375 pages, which I think is, it's pretty thick, but not ridiculously thick. Like the current one is 400 pages or 402 pages, I think, which is fine, but that was like the max of what I wanted. The Red Sun core rulebook will also be the same. It will contain everything in the entire setting. Well, not everything, like the core stuff. That's why it's called our core rulebook. And then if I put out expansion supplements, they'll just detail more, just add more details, like more talents, more spells, kind of like most game designers do. The same, maybe even a bestiary. Although I prefer to do new supplements that have creatures but other stuff in it. I find just straight bestiaries. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm not opposed to that. I just feel like an entire book that's just nothing to do with monsters. I think if you do creatures, monsters, major NPCs, NPC templates, you could probably justify it and fill it up pretty well. So, at any rate, let me know what you think in the comments, Red Sun or Savage Kingdoms, and anything else, how you feeling, and that kind of stuff. So, thanks for watching my stuff, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye.